All right, so at this point we have the ability to add new notes. So the next thing that I want to take a look at is how to actually delete notes. Now, what we want to do here is add another button essentially to each of these notes in our notes list that will display a modal on the page. All right, so what that's going to look like is something like this. It's just going to display a modal here that will ask something like, are you sure you want to delete blah, blah, blah? And it'll say yes or no in the buttons there. And if the user clicks on yes, then we're going to delete that note from the state of our application. Okay, if we say no, it'll just dismiss the modal and nothing will happen. So here's how we're going to do this. We're going to start off, of course, by adding a delete button to our notes list. So let's open up our notes list component. We're going to add another button next to view that will say delete. So for this, we'll just say button delete. And when this thing is clicked, what we want to happen is we want it to alert the page component that contains this list, right? So our notes page, we want to alert that component that the user has clicked this delete button on a given note so that it can display the appropriate delete note modal. So what we're going to do for that is we're going to add a prop here to our notes list, which we'll call on click delete, or you know what, let's call it on delete clicked. Or actually even better, let's keep in the same vein as with our modal and call this on request delete, because we're not actually deleting that note yet, right? We're just requesting delete, which means that we want to display the modal, or we're allowing ourselves to cancel this operation if necessary. So that's why we're naming it something different here. Okay, and when this delete button is clicked, we're going to call on request delete with the ID of the note that that delete button was clicked on. So here's what that's going to look like. We're going to say on click equals on request delete note.id is going to be the argument there. So if we open up our notes page again, what we're going to have to do is get another function from our notes context, which will be called something like delete note. And we're going to have to call that when the user agrees that they want to delete a given note. Now, first of all, just like we did with our new note modal is open state variable here, we're going to create another state variable for determining whether or not the delete note modal is open. But instead of just having it be true or false, we're actually going to have this state variable be the ID of the note that the user is currently deleting. So we're going to call this state variable something like currently deleting note ID. Not the best name, but it'll work. And then we'll say set currently deleting note ID. There we go. Equals use state, and the initial value for this is going to be just an empty string, right? Because at first we're not going to be deleting any notes. And what we'll do is basically whenever the user wants to delete a note, we'll set this state variable to the ID of that note so that we A, know that we want to display the modal, and B, if the user agrees, we'll know which note we actually want to delete. So here's what that's going to look like. First of all, we're going to display a new modal here. We're going to say modal is open is going to be equal to whether or not this currently deleting note ID thing exists. So we can just say exclamation point, currently deleting note ID. That's what that does, in case you didn't know. And for on request close, we're going to set the currently deleting note ID. I misspelled that up here. Currently deleting note ID. Set currently deleting note ID to an empty string again. Okay, and inside this modal, we're going to do something just like what we did with our new note form here. We're going to create the delete note confirmation form. And for this, we'll just say something like, we'll just go into components, say new file. We'll say confirm deletion, or confirm delete note form.js. And what this is going to look like, it's going to be pretty straightforward. We're going to say export const confirm delete note form equals, and this is going to take two props. One is going to be called on confirm, and the other is going to be called on deny, right? You can call these on yes and on no if you want, if that makes it easier for you, but on confirm, on deny. And basically, those are just going to be functions that get called depending on whether the user clicks on the yes button or the no button. All right, so the basic JSX of this form is going to be very simple. We're just going to have a heading that says delete note. Under that, we're going to have a paragraph tag that says, are you sure you want to delete this note? And under that, we're going to have a button that will say yes and a button that will say no. And these are just going to call their corresponding props up here. So for yes, we'll just say onClick equals onConfirm. And for no, we'll say onClick equals onDeny. All right, and we're going to have to wrap all of this in React fragments, just like with our others. And now back in our notes page, we can import this confirm delete note form. We're going to say import confirm delete note form from its file. And down here inside this modal, we're going to say confirm delete note form. On confirm, what that's going to do is actually call this delete note thing with the ID that we had inside of here. So we'll say on confirm delete note, currently deleting note ID. And we're going to close the modal by saying set currently deleting note ID to an empty string. Okay, and for on deny, we're just going to say set currently deleting note ID. And here's what that'll look like on deny. Just going to add an empty function there, paste that inside of there, and that is that. So that's our confirm delete note form, and that should be everything we need. The last thing we have to do is implement this delete note function now. So let's go into our notes provider. We're going to define a new function called delete note, which will take care of deleting a note by ID. We'll just we'll have it take a single argument called ID. And what we're going to do here is say set notes to notes.filter. And what we're going to do inside of here, we only want the notes whose ID does not match this ID that we want to delete. So note.id does not equal ID. And that should take care of deleting our notes. So let's just pass that function through here so that our components can access it. We'll say delete note, and that's all we need now. So let's head back to our browser, and we should see that all of our notes now have this little delete button. So let's try it out. If we click on this delete button, we still don't have on request delete. So all we need to do here is open up our notes page, and we're going to have to go down to our notes list and add on request delete as a prop. So on request delete equals, and when that happens, we're going to set the currently deleting note ID to whatever ID this prop was called with. So we'll say ID set currently deleting note ID to ID. All right. So that should be all we need. Let's check this now. We're going to click on delete. And sure enough, it says, are you sure you want to delete this note? If we click on no, it'll go away. If we click on yes, it will actually delete that note. So that's how we take care of deleting notes via a modal in our application. I hope this has been informative for you, and I'd like to thank you for viewing.